On August 30th, 1976, Milagros vanished. She disappeared the day after her 22nd birthday. She was 4 months pregnant. Her family discovered she had been kidnapped. 47 years later, her family continues to search for her, hoping they can find Milagros.
My name is Rafael Perez, but everyone in the family calls me as Fuche. It's my nickname, so Uncle Fuche is to you. I lived in the Hudson Valley for over 35 years. I moved from Brooklyn to go to school here at the State University of New York at SUNY New Paltz. And I stay here pretty much all my life. And up to recent, I was actually doing halfway. I was working in the city and in the Hudson Valley, and after the pandemic, I just stayed full-time in the Hudson Valley. I'm a big mountain biker. When I'm not mountain biking, I'm actually biking this trail, a big hiker, jogger. So, love city energy, but this is home, like being in nature, having space and open spaces. Lots of water. If I'm not at the lakes, I'm definitely by the river, so, and if I'm not here, I definitely get to go to the beach. I think it's just in my DNA to want to be in nature, open spaces. We live in the central mountain range called Las Cordilleras Central, which is where the highest peak in the Caribbean, Pico Duarte, is. Parque Bermuda is the national park. So we live like just on the edge of the national park. A little town called Hamamusito, which I say probably 300 is. It's just a village, really. So it's like a remote village, about 300 population. My family, I'm the youngest of 11. So I think that we were like one of like maybe 5, 6 families in this little village. What I remember as a young kid is we had our own chickens, grew our own vegetable. My father was a tobacco and coffee farmer, and we lived from the land. One of my earliest memory was that like everyone had a job, and as like a 5-year-old, my job was to egg hunt. Like I would get chicken eggs, like that was my job. I provided breakfast for the family. So a cool story is that when I came to the States and Easter is like that egg hunting, I was like, this is not real. Like I used to do the actual thing. We would go to church and horseback riding. Like every once in a while, whenever the priest would come to town. So just like we were very traditional Catholic Roman family, it was just a very simple way of life. Like still the property where we grew up has no electricity. There's still no major road access. Like you have to either hike there or get there by like horseback riding. When my mom left the DR. She came to the site, so she started the process of getting the family here. I was 3, and Milagros was, I would say she was 15. So she became like a surrogate mother to me. She was there to do parental stuff, like, I don't know, like, I don't have a whole lot of memory. Like, I'm sure she fed me. I'm sure she like put me to bed. I think I slept with either Hilda or her. Like most of my memory is like playing with my closest in age sibling, like Milady, Jose, because we're like 2-3 years apart. But like my sister was mostly like chores, like she was cooking, she was washing the dishes, she was washing clothes. Like she was doing like adult parental responsibility stuff. So she was more that kind of, it was more that kind of relationship. In 73, that's when so I was 6 years old, Milagro was 18. That's when I knew that I was coming to the States. It was my sister Hilda, my sister Milagros, and my dad, and me. So the 4 of us in May of 1973, and I had no idea like what that meant. I had no idea that there was going to be like a separation between like my siblings closer to age. They stay behind. My sense is that your parents are, you know, like they're making these decisions and they're just telling you what the decision is and not asking you like, how do you feel about moving to the States? So I don't think that any of us were giving the opportunity to express how we felt. We were told like this is what's happening. So when we first came here, we lived in the Lower East Side, Delancey and Eldridge. And I remember living in this like crowded apartment. And then soon after we moved to Williamsburg, my two sisters came with my father to join my mom and me because they were part of this family business. They were seamstresses, like everyone worked for the family business. So at that time, there was a need for working people. So my sister at 18, like she had already would be aged out of school. So that was not the plan. Like the plan was for her to work, but she did go to school. She went to night school. Yeah, so she'd be like working from, I don't know, 8 in the morning or 7 in the morning to like 5 or 6, and then she would go to night school, and then she would come home. And what I do remember is that we would do homework together because she had English. She was taking English classes, and I was in first grade. I was learning English, so we would sit down and do our English homework together. It's really weird, right? A 6-year-old and an 18-year-old doing homework, but it's actually kind of cool. So we had this routine. I went to school, she worked, and she went to school afterwards. So we would do homework, and then we would watch novelas, So we had like this whole planned day, and then, we do it again the next day. When Milagros was coming to the state was that she had been promised to a family, like a marriage. So my sister had to get engaged before coming to the state to a man who was matched to be a boyfriend, a possible match, and this was something that my parents have made a decision. Probably not uncommon at that time for parents to make those type of arrangements, but the arrangement was complicated because it had to do with an agreement that my parents had with that family. So my sister followed through with the engagement. So was my other sister Hilda. She was engaged to her boyfriend, and the goal was that after a year they would come back and get married. Milagros came to the state already with that expectation from my parents that she would have to marry this man, whom very clearly when we came to the state, she said, I don't love this person. I don't agree with what I'm being asked. And that I remember clearly, that I saw my sister for the first time, like I saw a sibling expressing their feelings and their sense of self, and she was very clear that she didn't feel any love for this person, and she was told that it was not a choice, that a decision has been made, and that she was expected to follow through. And my sister had a hard time accepting that. Her future was decided by her parents and not herself, and as a result, she did agree to marry this man, but she clearly stated to my parents that her intention was never to live with this man. Like, she was not romantically wanted to be involved, but that she would do it to comply with the request. And the request was that she would then petition her husband to come to the state and help their family immigrate to the States. I remember very much her expressing her anger, particularly to my mom. I think my mom was the matriarch, but she was perhaps the person behind a lot of this. And my sister would have conversation about, it is really not fair that I get to not have a say in my future. I don't get to pursue the things that I want. So while she was in the process of petitioning her legal husband, so my sister did go back a year later and marry. So there was two, so it's like two weddings. Like my sister Hilda married her husband Pedro. They were very much in love. Milagro, her wedding happened also with my sister's wedding. It's like a double wedding. But her wedding was not a church wedding. But Milagros married and came here. And then when she came back, this was like 1974, she was completing the responsibility to make sure that she petitioned this man so that he can come here. She really saw that this marriage impacted her ability to do things. Like, she really wanted to go to school. Like, yeah, she wanted to work. She needed to work, and she wanted to go to school. My sister was interested in fashion. My sister was interested in, she was very curious. She was really interested in finding out a lot about life in the States. Like New York was so exciting. You know, when you come from this village, there's absolutely nothing. And you're in the middle of New York, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, there's a fashion industry. You know, we were working the manufacturing side, but my sister was very curious about like fashion, and I think part of her rebellion sometimes was seen in her fashion. Like this was scandalous in 1974, but like my sister would wear a skirt to go to church. My parents would be like absolutely horrified that one of their children would wear a miniskirt to church. That was her way of saying, well, you know, you're gonna take away my choosing who I get to be with. I get to choose how I express myself. So when you come from families that are so conservative, and you know, like your sister has been promised she can never go out alone. Like if she ever wanted to go anywhere to the movies, like she always had a brother, and I was the brother who always, like I was the chaperone. So I had to go everywhere with my sister, you know, and I was like, really, do we have to go shopping again? Like, I want to play with my friends. Like, I wanted to be with my peers. And my sister like, let's go shopping. And I'm like, we were just shopping 2 weeks ago. I was a kid that like, I was with my sister and we would be shopping everywhere. She discovered the wholesale shopping in the fashion district. So she was not shopping in like the stores, like the retail stores, because when you shop wholesale and you figure out a way of getting retail at wholesale, you get to wear things that are not on the stores. So this was one of my sister's like edge amongst her friend. Like she would wear things that were not out yet, and she was like a little bit ahead of the trend. And I think that was her way of like, you know, like with her friends, like she would wear dresses that were not out yet in retail. So that was the coolest thing. But I was a kid that was like holding up like hangers of dresses while my sister is like in the fitting room trying all these dresses. I'm like, come on, at 7, 8 years old, like that's not what you want to be doing, right? But that was my experience. And those were like ultimately like fun things. And it's funny because I thought like, oh man, like I want to be a fashion designer. And I thought I was going to be a fashion designer growing up. I love fashion designing, and I think that that's also one of the things that connects us still. Back in the days, you know, we didn't have social media. Like you actually went to people's birthday parties. You went to baptism, you went to weddings, you went to, like there was always some sort of like celebration going on. What's really cool is to see like my sisters and her friends, like they would have sleepovers. That was the only time that I remember, like I don't need to go to the sleepovers, but like they would have sleepovers, they would plan like parties, and they would do, I'm assuming they would do like hair, makeup, and all that stuff. They all had boyfriends, so they were engaged, and they were planning weddings, and they were like looking at magazines, and they were like looking at hair, makeup, like that kind of stuff. And that's like what I hear they did. Like that was fun. Like my sister did not need a chaperone if she was going to a sleepover to a friend, because we knew where they were, you know. But in 75, she did meet a guy, Juan, whom they had a long courtship, and it took a while for my parents to agree that she can have a boyfriend while she was married and petitioning her legal husband. When my parents sort of warmed up to the idea that she could have a boyfriend, although it needed to be on the down low. So it was an awkward experience for the family. She was married, but she had a boyfriend. And then the idea was, okay, you can go out as long as you're chaperone. So I was the chaperone. I would go to, like, we would go to the movies. We would go on car drives. We would go to Statue of Liberty. We would go to the airport. We would just tour New York, right? That went on for throughout 75, and then earlier in 1976, they did eloped. And I want to say it was like the spring of 76. They moved to Queens. That took some getting used to from my parents. Like, it took a couple of weeks for them to reconcile that my sister, whom was already married, could not marry. So my sister and her boyfriend wanted to get married, but they couldn't because she was already married. So they had their own engagement, and then they decided that they were just going to live together. So that took a little bit of getting used to for the family. But slowly throughout that summer, they kind of warmed up to the idea that, you know, she was starting her life and that she was also very much compliant with what my parents wanted from her. That summer, my sister shared with us that she was pregnant. She was very excited about that, and that she was eager to start a family with her boyfriend. They were very close and very much in love. When we visited her apartment, like, she made it her home and she was like really excited to see us. So I would say she probably enjoyed being in her own place. It was warm and it was cozy and it was not as cluttered as our home, because our apartment, I think there were like 5 siblings and my parents. And then we had like a cousin live with us. It was overcrowded. So like I remember it's like she had a 1-bedroom apartment, but it was like spacious. It was like 2 people living in a 1-bedroom apartment is like, it's a luxury, right? Yeah, that I remember. It's like, oh my God, they have so much space and this is really cool. And home was just crowded. What I do remember is like that she would always take the train to come to Williamsburg. Yeah, I think she probably lived the furthest from the family. We were all within like a couple of blocks from one another, a very super concentrated, like this is where we live in Milagros is in Queens, you know? It's like, it's just a couple of miles, but it's like, it was another world for us. It's like, wow, she's on the other side of town. Having us for dinner was one of those things, like once in a while we would go there and she would make like dinner for us, and that was pretty cool. At that time, her older siblings, my older brothers and sisters, they were having children. She was very much a good, like, I want to go and meet the babies. So that was really cute. Like, she's super excited. I think at that time we just had like, maybe like 5 or 6. You know, now we have like 35 nephews and nieces. And that was like 3 or 4, like whenever there was a new member, we're like, oh my God, you know, so cute. Like, let's go visit the baby. Let's get gifts, you know. But yeah, back then I remember she's like, I gotta get the baby something. There's a new baby, or like, I want to go and help out. And I think because when she was expecting, there was like, I'm gonna be a mom, so I wanna be around other moms. You know, I'm gonna learn what new moms do. Milagros was a curious, self-expressive, intelligent, creative friend and sister. Yeah. Milagros disappeared on August 30th, 1976. She had just turned 22 years old the day before, and she was pregnant, 4 months pregnant. Her and her partner were expecting their first child. I would say maybe 48 hours we learned that she was kidnapped. So the day of her birthday, Milagros had invited family for a dinner, like a birthday dinner. There were also 2 neighbors. She kept saying like, and I didn't like the way that strangers were looking at her, and why would you invite 2 strangers into a family?